Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for your patience. This is what happens when you're programmed without any time to move from one event to another. But anyway, as I catch my breath here for a moment, I am so pleased to see such a full room for this discussion. This is going to be a great next 90 minutes. So I think all of you heard the High Commissioner yesterday morning when he talked about this being a moment with what's going on in the world today, a moment for unity, which we're very much looking forward to the kind of conversation we're about to have with regard to the unity amongst the humanitarian development, peace parts of our planet, trying to make the world a better place, certainly. And I have to say, the unity is needed more than ever. I don't want to repeat some of the numbers that we've been talking about extensively over the last day and a half. 114 million people forced to move today. Unfortunately, this is a number that has doubled in the last decade, so the trend line is not a positive one. We talk, unfortunately, about little hope in places like Sudan and in Ukraine, but also elsewhere in the Middle East. And so on, and the links really that we need to be making amongst development, peace, and displacement could not be more urgent today. We know very much that when we talk about forced displacement, we're seeing an absence of peace, a combination of a very fragile socioeconomic situation in these contexts, conflict, and of course, importantly, climate factors. Natural disasters and the like. So we have, and I think some of you have been very closely associated with this journey now for the last several years. We took a moment last year during the High Commissioner's Protection Dialogue to focus very much on development and on solutions. It was another part of this journey. We are aiming to go beyond immediate humanitarian need, of course, to recognize that peace and sustainable development and humanitarian action are really critical for these solutions that we aim to achieve. Now, there are a number of places we've seen that the effectiveness of this approach, where we favor, for example, in law or in policy, the socioeconomic inclusion of refugees, that this is a win-win, as I would say very bluntly. In Mexico, for example, a place I visited not too long ago, we see that where refugees are in possession of documentation, when they can be relocated in a labor market that needs them, in particular, a place that I visited, an agribusiness where they were desperate for such support. When they have access to the labor market, they can make a difference. And in this case, adding $8.5 million in tax revenues to the local economy. A similar approach has been used in Brazil, where I was earlier this year, where again, a recognition of inclusion, particularly socioeconomic inclusion, means an economic boon to the local and the host communities. This is something that we need to pursue, we need to build on, and we need to grow. The increased development financing has been an important part of this and a significant step forward. We know that the OECD Refugee Financing Survey revealed that more than $9 billion in development assistance was directed towards refugee responses in 2021 and 2020. This is something now that we're looking increasingly at the very beginning of displacement, the beginning of emergencies. For example, we've seen earlier this year that $340 million for development projects by the World Bank announced in the context of the Sudan response, and then the humanitarian aid announced by the United States government of $163 million. Again, partnering together, this is a different approach that we can take to those refugees that are trying to find protection, safety, but also trying to rebuild their lives very quickly. Many stakeholders, of course, are involved, and I think that's one of the reasons why one of the larger rooms were used for this event, because there are many stakeholders involved. Private sector, of course, development actors, refugees, importantly at the center, governments, and many of you are in the room, and we appreciate that. We've seen this in Ethiopia, where I was in July, how we can see markets and opportunities together, making a real difference in people's lives. And that's clearly with an approach that includes not just humanitarian partners like ourselves, but development actors, the private sector, importantly, government, with sustainable technical and financial support. And there are lots and lots of examples. The pledge that we're going to be talking about in the next few minutes is one that would not have been possible without the leadership of Japan and UNDP, and I want to thank them both. They have been with us on this journey again from the very beginning, and I think to build on the progress, we're going to look forward to how do we take the pledge today even monumentally forward. It calls for a long-term vision, emphasizing resilience, socioeconomic development, and peace from the outset of crises. And it brings perspectives, different perspectives together. And I'm very honored to introduce, first off, to talk about this multi-stakeholder pledge, Dr. Akihito Tanaka of JICA, and Mr. Haolang Chu from UNDP. And thank you very much for both of your longstanding commitment. And I'm going to turn the floor first to Dr. Tanaka to start us off. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is my great pleasure to be with you on this very important occasion. I'm Akihiko Tanaka, President of Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA. Thank you very much for joining the high-level event co-hosted by UNDP and JICA. We are in the midst of a humanitarian crisis. Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, Sahel, and elsewhere. But these humanitarian crises cannot be addressed by emergency humanitarian aid alone. Development and peace actors need to join forces with humanitarians to deal with the complicated challenges of protracted crises, address the root causes, and prevent future crises. In recognition of this importance, at this second GRF, the government of Japan and JICA would like to call for further expansion of partnership by announcing the Humanitarian-Development-Peace Nexus multi-stakeholder pledge. The importance of the HDP Nexus has been discussed for many years. So you may wonder what is new about this pledge. The HDP Nexus has often been discussed in terms of sharing information and joint program implementation among actors. But there remains much to be done. First, we would like to draw your attention to the importance of the whole of society approach. In our understanding, the HDP Nexus is not just about cooperation between aid providers. It is about cooperation between broader stakeholders with different strengths, all represented here today at this event, namely refugee representatives, host governments, civil society, the private sector, development banks, and regional organizations. Another important, essential principle for the HDP Nexus is to realize the complementarities among different actors. Each of the HDP actors should play to its strengths while sharing the same goal. Through this, we can create synergies and maximize the benefits of working together for seeking solutions and realizing peaceful coexistence and human security for all. In promoting this approach, we cannot overemphasize the central role played by the host governments and their leadership. The host government is the primary actor to promote coordination and refugee inclusion. For this, the capacity development of host country governments, including local governments, is of primary importance. Here, the role of JICA and other development actors to support host countries is critical. Toward operationalizing the HDP Nexus MSP, we are now actively discussing how we can work together with host countries such as Uganda, Zambia, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Colombia. JICA has been providing support to both host countries and refugees in line with this idea. We believe that only through this approach can we expect to unlock the potential of refugees as, quote unquote, agents of development and create a win-win solution for refugees and their hosts. We support capacity development for host governments, promotion of the HDP Nexus approach through the secondment of experts to refugee authorities in countries such as Uganda and Zambia. JICA has also provided support for both refugees and host communities for their self-reliance, infrastructure development, and more recently, strengthening of psychosocial support. Furthermore, in Uganda, JICA is going one step further by supporting integrated development planning that incorporate refugees' demands in the local development plans. We are working with the government in their transition efforts to further promote inclusion of refugees into their national policy framework and services. Our experiences and lessons learned from the HDP Nexus approach have been summarized as what we call the Kaeru approach. Kaeru is a Japanese word, has multiple meanings. One is to change and transform, kaeru. And another is to return and come back, kaeru. Here is the first, transform the refugee response framework, and secondly, to help refugees get home. This model, kaeru model, provides guidelines to promote the HDP Nexus approach to host countries in accordance with each country's circumstances and refugees' policy context. To conclude, let me assure you that JICA continues our cooperation for those displaced and host communities, and to promote the HDP Nexus based on the whole of society approach. I wish you fruitful discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tanaka. Really a pleasure and an honor to have you with us and for your partnership. Now I'd next like to turn to my colleague from UNDP, Haolong Chu, for his keynote address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy High Commissioner. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Tanaka. It is a privilege to join this Global Refugee Forum to address one of the most pressing challenges we're facing, the forced displacement, because it is affecting the lives of 140 million people. Today, on behalf of the United Nations, and we're pleased to with Japan, with government of Japan, to co-lead this Humanitarian-Development-Peace Nexus multi-stakeholder pledge. And this pledge reflects our joint commitment to breaking the cycle of fragility, addressing the root causes of displacement, and easing the burden on host communities and the host countries. In recent years, the world witnessed witnessed an unprecedented rise in forced displacement. This reality demands a transformative approach that transcends traditional silos of actions and brings together humanitarian development and the peace efforts. This is the essence of the HDP Nexus, a framework that integrates three critical pillars to ensure that in a more comprehensive and more sustainable response to displacement. UNDP is firmly committed to this Nexus approach, right? In a way, a principled strategy of stay and deliver within context of crisis and the risks of development backlash. This commitment extends across complex settings such as Afghanistan and the Ukraine, where populations are grappling with complex crisis situations. This also extends to contexts that are repeatedly affected by disasters and the climate impacts, such as the Philippines, the Horn of Africa, and the small developing states. We are determined to get ahead of the crisis curve and anticipate risks, break the cycle of protracted crisis, and sustain development pathways in times of crisis. In the Sahel region, for example, where recurrent disasters and ongoing crises and other crises eroded the community resilience, UNDP's Sahel Resilience Project pursues a comprehensive and systemic approach. By focusing on disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and resilience, and building resilience, we are not only responding to immediate challenges, but also creating a foundation for more resilience ahead. Together with the UNHCR, we lead the regional refugee and the resilience plan for the Syria crisis for the past 8 years. In collaboration with the 270 partners, we are targeting over 7.4 million refugees and 6 million host community members through protection and resilience-based development initiatives. The 3RP contributed to the resilience of refugees and host communities, providing employment to over 500,000 people, and the $1.6 billion of capacity support to public institutions, and also the training of over 900,000 public service staff. Similarly, under the Ukraine Regional Refugee Response Plan, UNDP and the UNHCR are co-leading the socio-economic inclusion of refugees with a strong focus on the access to labor market, to education and skills, to entrepreneurship, and the financial inclusion and the social protection. So we're also committed to addressing forced displacement through development solutions. In response to the UN Secretary General's action agenda, we developed an institutional strategy to support development solutions to internally displacement, together with Mr. Pipe, the Secretary General's Special Advisor. The strategy steers UNDP's approach to adapt and implement existing and new innovative programs of risk-informed, conflict-sensitive, and age, gender, and diversity responsive solutions that can support ending displacement and sustain long-term social cohesion and peace. Right. So to end, today, right, we call upon our partners, governments, and the international community to join us in this transformative journey. We're asking for your commitment, support, and collaboration. The Nexus and the multi-stakeholder pledge is an invitation to all of us to rethink how we respond to forced displacement. It is a commitment to bridge the gaps between humanitarian development and peace effort. Let us work hand in hand, guided by the collaborative spirit of our partnership, and turn the HDP Nexus Pledge into catalyst for positive change. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Associate Administrator Howling. Really appreciate your comments and also your partnership. Okay, that's the formal part of the opening of this session. Now we're going to turn to the panel. And I'm very happy to have a number of experienced colleagues, some old friends sitting next to me. First is Farida Luanda, who I actually met yesterday on a panel, and she had some very insightful things to tell us. And I know that today's not going to be an exception. Refugee youth leader activist from the Democratic Republic of Congo and gender and diversity coordinator of the Global Refugee Youth Network. Welcome to you. Next to her is Ambassador Gustavo Adolfo Halon Geraldo, who is the permanent representative here for Colombia in Geneva. And next to him is Ms. Esther Akanyu Davinia, who is the Minister of State for Relief, Disaster Preparedness, and Refugees in the Office of the Prime Minister from Uganda. And next to her is Felipe Munoz, Chief of Migration Unit at the Inter-American Development Bank. And next to him is Barbara Dansrol-Schorl, who is the is the head of humanitarian and multilateral affairs from the Swiss Agency for Development Cooperation. Little last minute change there. We almost promoted you. Thanks for joining us, Barbara. Okay, Farida, we're going to start with you, please. And I'm not going to go through with lengthy questions, but why does this matter to refugees? Why does what we're talking about here in terms of humanitarian development and peace and having that all come together, how does it make a difference to you?
I think I'm short. Yeah, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Protocol observed. I'm very happy to be here. And I have some few points which I recorded here on my note because I don't want to miss anything out. First, I'd love to approach to this question in this way. With limited collaboration and integrated responses, many actors end up duplicating work and wasting a lot of donors' resources. And that was kind of like supposed to be used for other interventions and that can change our lives as refugees. And this will change when we have a better coordination and the little donor resources we have will be used in the right way and in an effective way that changes many refugees' lives. For example, if one partner came and trained refugees in tailoring, and the second one will not come back in the same program or project, will come with another, maybe in other skilling programs, or to buy materials or machines so that to empower those who got already that project before or that trained. And this, from that, in case first and the second they leave, these refugees, they can sustain, they can have the sustainable way of living. And with the collaboration and integrated work will also enhance the changes of skills and experience exchange. I think technical experts in the international communities or spaces will be able to share their skills and knowledge with us as refugees and refugee leaders so that they can go back, and refugee-led organizations, they can go back in their communities so that they can share those skills from the group, from the international level to the local communities. That is very important. And also it will also facilitate access to funding and resources for refugee-led organizations, groups, and organizations that are forefront of serving their commitments. I want to give, I think there's still a need for developing like a genuine kind of partnership with the refugee-led organizations should be defined, and what action maybe and changes looks like in their communities. For example, I can give an example amidst COVID-19, whereby that all the UN agencies, NGOs, also the government partners, they were like not having access to the communities, but refugees, they stood up. All of us, we worked on this. And like the example, I know my time is up, but I don't want to leave anything. And my, within these skills that young people, they managed to help the communities to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Like by then I was in Chakatu refugee settlement, but I took the initiative and also to translating the information from the World Health Organization to my local languages and people to understand what to do because there was limited. And this is what Green we are doing. Mm-hmm. Within that Green, we are trying to empower those initiatives at the local level, funding them directly to strengthen those initiatives with their own projects, they implement, and also to help themselves to sustainability and to be change champions within those communities. Thank you so much. You know, my time is up. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Farida. Thank you so much. And I think she's going on to another event too. Thank you very much, Farida. I'm going to turn to the Minister Davinia. From a government perspective, can you tell us a little bit about what key lessons and advice you would have and the importance on government leadership and ownership of this approach as we're trying to roll this out everywhere?
Thank you very much. Dr. Akiho, the President, High Commissioner, and my friends were right seated next to me, ladies and gentlemen. Uganda came to the GRF today here and also to this event with a theme, Uganda, the world's model for refugee response. And let's make it sustainable. And I think that's why we are all under this roof today. The government of Uganda, through His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, he has offered strong leadership in shaping our approach in the refugee response and also managing all our policies. We are hosting over 1.6 million refugees with a lot of challenges with the reduced humanitarian funding. But our support to people in distress will not stop. And I want to use the word that the President, who is the leader of our nation, uses. He put it in quotes. He says, I see no harm to host people who have come here with distress. So that's the word he uses. This is no harm. With or without with or with the challenges that we are having as a country. We have first of all want to appreciate that the HDP have been a key fostering peaceful cohesion and coexistence during the response in Uganda. And this has also reduced the social tension in the protracted refugee situation. You look at that, the host community are welcoming the refugees because they are able to maximize and share all the development programs that we are having under the refugees. So it brings joy in both parties. Nobody feels the impact of the refugees being in their villages because they're sharing the big projects that we have been getting through this. And then we also have, as a government, we have the comprehensive refugee response framework that has really helped us in enhancing coordination of all our stakeholders. We have quarterly steering group meetings in the country, so we're able to sit with all the stakeholders and see how are we managing the response in the country. So this one keeps us also as government, and I always chair that steering group to know what is going on, and we're able to follow and also stock check what we are doing with all the partners in the country. So all the humanitarian and development actors come for this meeting every quarter, and we know what is going on. The government of Uganda has a very integral role also in spearheading the regional peace and enabling return and reintegration of efforts of Somali, Burundi, South Sudanese, among others. And we know all that the Peace Nexus would help us to have refugees return home voluntarily, and also be able to ensure that they have better services when they go back home. And we feel like the way forward for this is we should have continuous support to the regional peace building. We should also, for example, we have the IGAD Kampala Munyonyo Declaration. Development programs of the refugees and host communities should continue to be supported in terms of coexistence, strengthen development programs and social services in all countries of origin to be sustainable. I want to conclude by saying we commend the government of Japan for the continued support to the Uganda refugee response and for the HDP Nexus within the IGAD region. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for those comments and advice for all of us. And I'm going to turn next to Colombia. Ambassador, from a host government perspective, can you tell us a little bit about the advantages of socioeconomic inclusion of refugees and displaced in your communities? Over to you.
Gracias, Kelly. Excelencias, estimados colegas, distinguidos participantes, señoras y señores, es un honor representar a Colombia en este evento de relevancia internacional, donde se aborda el intrínseco vínculo entre desarrollo, paz y el contexto humanitario, particularmente en situaciones de desplazamiento forzado. Antes de referirme a la pregunta puntual que me ha hecho Kelly, permítame salirme un poco del protocolo para contarles que Colombia y Japón son países coauspiciadores del Foro Mundial sobre Refugiados. Lideramos este compromiso de desarrollo, paz y contexto humanitario, y nosotros, junto a Egipto y Noruega, lideramos el compromiso de construcción de paz y prevención de conflictos. Esto muestra que tuvimos una importante sinergia al decidir poner la paz en el centro de este Foro Mundial sobre Refugiados. Estamos caminando hacia el mismo lado. Nuestros países tienen una relación histórica que nos une, siendo Japón nuestro socio histórico en la región de Asia-Pacífico. Japón se ha adaptado de manera ejemplar y constante a las necesidades cambiantes de nuestro país, demostrando ser un aliado estratégico, contribuyendo de manera significativa a diversas áreas claves de desarrollo humano, desde el desarrollo rural incluyente hasta las políticas urbanas, la formación de víctimas del conflicto, el desminado humanitario, la educación para la paz y el apoyo a migrantes y refugiados. La cooperación bilateral ha sido un pilar fundamental para el progreso de Colombia. Por eso quiero agradecerles el anuncio que hicieron el día de ayer para seguir apoyándonos en desarrollo y paz. Estamos seguros de que esta colaboración continuará fortaleciendo los lazos entre nuestros países y allanando el camino hacia un futuro más justo, inclusivo y pacífico. Lo que ustedes hacen es una contribución ejemplar para que podamos alcanzar un desarrollo sostenible y sigamos construyendo los pilares de la paz. Volviendo a la pregunta que me ha hecho Kelly para este panel, quisiera destacar el impacto positivo de la migración económica venezolana, aunque sé que acá en la mesa tenemos a los expertos en ese ámbito y estoy seguro de que mi compatriota y querido amigo Felipe Muñoz les dará datos mucho más relevantes. Como saben, Colombia implementó hace unos años el Estatuto Temporal de Protección para regularizar a nuestros hermanos venezolanos inmigrantes en Colombia. De acuerdo con estudios del PNUD, se estima que los ingresos fiscales para el periodo 2021-2030 aumentarán en un 2,9% del Producto Interno Bruto de 2021 frente a un escenario sin migración. Asimismo, de acuerdo también con el marco de inclusión socioeconómica del PNUD, en relación con la dimensión de empleabilidad, los ingresos que puede obtener el gobierno nacional debido a la actividad económica formal de la población migrante en edad de trabajar pueden ascender al orden de los 34 billones de pesos, casi 8.600 millones de dólares, y llegar en el corto plazo a los 45 billones de pesos, casi 11.400 millones de dólares. Esta información resalta, y yo voy a terminar, perdón porque me excedí un poco en el tiempo, esta información resalta aún más la importancia de la colaboración internacional y cómo la migración, cuando se gestiona adecuadamente, no solo enriquece nuestras sociedades en lo cultural, sino que también contribuye significativamente al desarrollo económico y a la construcción de un futuro más próspero y equitativo. Entonces, sigamos apoyando y desarrollando buenas políticas en materia de atención a los migrantes y al respeto, la protección y la garantía de sus derechos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for those reflections. Very important for our discussion. Could I turn now to Felipe? International financial institutions obviously have a huge role to play with regional banks in supporting governments like Colombia to shape policies and implement them. We'd love to hear a few examples from you.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Ambassador Gallon, and good morning, everyone. As all of you know, Latin America's experienced, especially in the last 5 years, a massive movements of people. It's a mixed migration flows. We had migrants, we had refugees, we had asylum seekers, and the countries in the region have been response with generosity. But what role can we play, we as an Inter-American, as a regional development bank? I think we have a privileged role to be like, to build this kind of nexus between humanitarian and development process, this bridge. How? Because all the resources that we have, non-reversible resources, are matching with our loans. I mean, this is like the governments of the region decided just to put some resources in their own citizens, and with this, we help these countries to include the refugees, the migrants, and the asylum seeker as part of the beneficiaries. We don't make some programs just for migrants, just for refugees, because it creates also xenophobic sentiments. We help the government just to include them as part of the beneficiaries as any other of the citizens. And the second reason that we have this privilege is because we have a privileged dialogue at any level, and we have financial tools, and we can work with the other sectors in the government. The third thing that I want to highlight is that also we work in policy reforms. The loans and the projects are a good example, but what is most important is behind this specific loan, we have made change that are going to be longer. For example, in Ecuador, we recently approved a loan for improve the housing system, and we can work with the government to change our regulation to allow the refugees and migrants to receive subsidy for rents. This is the kind of, just is a change in a decree, but this is a very long-lasting change forever, regardless the amount of people that we benefit with this specific project. And another thing is that we can work along with the projects with evidence. We can produce knowledge, we can produce evidence, what are the impacts, the good impacts to receive and to integrate the migrants. We recently launched with UNDP and OECD, for example, a set of indicators of integration as a baseline to compare how good are the countries doing in integrate the migrants. And in that way, we can show to the public opinion, that this is a good business to integrate the migrants. This is the kind of things that we can do as a development bank, as a regional, in this case, development bank. And of course, we can do it with our own resources, but also we can leverage the resources from donors. I take the opportunity to thank the Renew donor resources that we receive from the United States, Canada, Korea, and Spain. And of course, we work with other governments, especially with Japan, for example, to receive different financial tools to create this. And I'm going just to finish to say, I say this the same thing. yesterday in another panel, but the countries in Latin America are facing, as we call, the second generation challenge in terms of integration of migrants. And second generation challenge is that we are working not anymore and in a humanitarian temporal response, but more in a development challenge. For example, we are working with Peru in a program in the pension system to receive some of the Venezuelan people that are there. This is a long-term vision. We are working with Costa Rica, for example, in a security project to try to create, and this is the link with the peace, create more peaceful community and make some prevention activities where you have communities with high density of migrants and refugees. We are working in labor integration in Ecuador, in Honduras. I mean, we as a regional banks, we have a privileged mandate, we have a privileged position to talk to the governments. And I think with the help of the donors and in a joint effort, we can be part of the solution as a bridge between humanitarian development and peace. Thank you.
Thanks, Felipe. I saw some nodding heads as you were ticking off those examples. We thank you very much for that. And finally, Barbara, you and the Swiss government have taken a whole of government approach to this issue, which is not easy, we know. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've done this and maybe give us a couple of country examples you've used to break down those silos?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry that Patricia Danzi is not here today, our Director General. She was called by our minister to respond to some questions to the Parliament, and it is about the refugee cause. So it's good that she's here. I'm there, I'm here. And I have to be a little bit creative. So, but what she told me is whatever we do, whenever we work also in the Nexus, for her, it's important that the people are at the center of what we are doing. That's all what she was able to tell me, but in this short time. But I want to tell you a little bit about our approach to the Nexus. The discussion on the humanitarian development Nexus is nothing new. When I started 20 years ago, 30 years ago even, it was at the table. At the beginning, it focused on aid effectiveness, handover, and sustainability. Today, the Humanitarian Development Peace Nexus is about joint actions towards shared outcomes. And today, I think most of the people, as we see here, agree that working in the Nexus is not anymore nice to have, but need to have. And this refers specifically to situations in this of displacement. We have heard about the high numbers of displaced people. As for example, also in the Middle East, these people are trapped in unstable environments for years or decades. So we need to have a Nexus approach and to address the problems in a sustainable way. And for example, laws and policies need to be drafted and included in development plans. Community resilience, social cohesion, urban planning, and employment needs to be tackled. And there we still need to strengthen this approach. We have in SDC, the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, we underwent a process of reorganization. And since September in 2022, we have so-called Nexus divisions. They are responsible for humanitarian aid and development cooperation. And I think with these measures, silos are broken down, and people that are working in these Nexus divisions have a holistic view on humanitarian needs, as well as development priorities in all the contexts that we are working in. So working in a humanitarian development Nexus comes more and more natural to them. And thanks to these reorganizations, we can now we have much more flexible funding. Flexible funding can be used for humanitarian and development programs. And I think this is also an important progress. We're trying to apply this approach in all our countries where we work on humanitarian aid and development cooperation and even peace. that means that we don't want to blur down the mandates of the different different instruments, but we really want to bring them together, and at the end, it's what the JASC says. We want to go towards joint outcomes, joint planning, joint financing, joint outcomes. And let me finish with a word about localization. I think we are convinced that localization is at the center of the HDP Nexus. Local organization can teach us how to live the Nexus. They respond to the needs of the communities in which they are embedded, and often do not distinguish between humanitarian aid, development cooperation, and also peace promotion. So we should learn from the local organization how to do and to live the Nexus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara, and that was pretty good thinking on your feet. So thank you for that. Thank you, panelists. We're going to move to the next segment. At first, we're going to see a little bit of a video, and I'm going to invite a special friend to join me up here on stage. Oh, it is such an honor and a pleasure to invite one of the most popular of our Goodwill ambassadors. They're all popular, but Miyavi, could you join us up here? I think many of you heard him last night. You heard his passion and his commitment, the years he spent advocating for refugees, the places he's been. And the last, actually, come on over here, Miyavi. Go, right here. Please have a seat. Have a seat. The places he's been, I last saw him actually in Tokyo just a few months ago, where he spent the whole day with us talking about what the Global Refugee Forum means, why forced displacement is important, why we need to get humanitarian and development and peace talking together. And Miyavi, I think we all would like to hear a little bit from you about why you've taken on this particular issue so passionately over the last few years.
First of all, thanks for having me today. And was it the last time I saw you?
I think so.
Did you miss my performance last night?
Oh, no, no. Oh, you're right. I just started with that.
Okay, okay. My name is Miyavi. I play the guitar and play music. And then as an ambassador, I mean, as a musician, you know, once I was introduced by Angelina Jolie, you know, it's a special envoy of UNHCR. I didn't know about the refugee crisis before I met her. So that was like 2015, 14. I was just rocking, playing the guitar, touring, kind of rock star life every day. But once I saw it, it's like, oh, we gotta do something. You know, we need to do something. And I was really unsure if there is something that I could do. So when I first visited the refugee camp settlement in Lebanon with the guitar, I was really scared. I was like, can I go there? There are lots of securities, you know. I was like, is there anything that I can do as a musician? But once I play the guitar in front of the kids, the children are like, this is something, you know, you never experienced before, because they were born and grew up in their community, the settlement. So at that time, I just realized, oh, there's something that, you know, even musicians can do. You know, somehow we can contribute, dedicate ourselves to this crisis. And then after that, and I just performed at the Nansen Award the last time, 2016. I became an ambassador. So this time I really, I'm actually feel really strong to see so many people, involved to this issue and more. But of course, this problem is getting actually worse. The number of the refugees are increasing. But at the same time, what I felt was like from the camps to the settlement to the urban, the cities. So how we let the refugees integrate into the community.
Mm.
So I saw the cash-based intervention the first time in Kenya,
Mhm.
so that the refugees can buy things. They think about what to do and what to buy, and also the power of culture, the music, the movie, so that we can kind of spread more awareness to the people. So I think it's really, really important. And last night I wore the cape, which the designer from Afghanistan made. But I didn't say he's a refugee. He's a designer. So I really hope, one day we call people not refugee. They're a chef, they're teachers, they're a designer, they're musicians, they're rock stars, So that's why we're kind of trying to find a new way to integrate and also inclusive community.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Done?
Yeah, all done. Thank you. Thank you very much, Miyavi. Okay, that was a little bit of a different transition. I now have wonderful new guests joining me here. Whoops.
Good.
Oh, goodness gracious. We're trying not to kill our panelists. Sorry, Karsten. Hopefully that's very secure now. Thanks very much. We're moving to the second panel now. This is on catalyzing innovative solutions with strategies and recommendations about how we can collaborate really practically. And so let me quickly introduce who is to my right. We have Dr. Workney Gibehagu, who is the Executive Secretary of IGAD, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, which we all know very well. Beside him is Ms. Mami Mitsutori, who is the head of the United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction. And next to her is Mr. Frank Bousquet. Nice to see you, Frank. Deputy Director of the Institute for Capacity Development at IMF. And next to him is Caroline Guignez, who's the Minister of Development Cooperation and of Mayor Cities in Belgium. And as you just saw, Karsten took a leading role on this panel with that that episode. Karsten Stauer is the chair of OECD, Development Assistance Committee, the DAC. So we're very pleased to have you all with us. And I'm going to start with Frank. Frank, if you could share your perspectives a bit about how we coordinate humanitarian development and peace efforts to help macro stability fragile economies that are hosting forcibly displaced. Thanks.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Many thanks, Kelly. It's a pleasure to be here. The IMF is not the H, is not the D, is not the P, but we do appreciate the HDP. First, many thanks to Japan. Tanaka-san spoke very clearly, but also you all, UNDP, and of course UNHCR for this session. So, going beyond acronyms, what is the issue? Forced displacement. I guess it's complex, otherwise there will not be a forum. I guess it requires to look at different facets, different perspectives. It's about social issue, political issue, security issue, but it's also about economic challenges. And I think from the IMF on our end, we really focus on macroeconomic stability. Is it important in the context of forced displacement? Big time. Why? Because if you are not focusing on macroeconomic stability, very difficult for countries to exit fragility. Macroeconomic and financial institutions can play a key role in, I would say, preventing state fragility to turn into failure. So we are just, at the IMF, one actor in a much bigger puzzle We value the role played by humanitarian actors, extremely important, as we have heard during this fantastic forum. We also value extremely the role of development actors, because we know that it's also requiring a sustainable approach. You heard IDB, I think it was very clear. It's a shift looking about policies and not just short-term support. We value, of course, the role of peace actors, because at the end of the day, looking at the root cause of displacement is important. So on our end, we are just focusing with our mandate. How can we add and do our part? So we have a new strategy adopted by our board last year, which really help us to focus on our most vulnerable members of the international community. Those fragile and conflict-affected states that are impacted by compound shock, talk about the debt, look at the cost of living crisis, food insecurity, look at as well inflation. And our role is really within our mandate to step up and partnering with organizations such as UNDP, WFP, and of course UNHCR, try to look how macro critical it is so that we can add our piece to the puzzle. We are not engaging with development actors. We are engaging with Ministry of Finance, Central Bank, but as I said before, making sure that we have strong macroeconomic financial institution is very important if you want to talk about private sector coming into the country, or even if you want to look at humanitarian actor role. So this is really the end goal we are looking at. We have been over the past year improving our presence on the ground, not to become a humanitarian actor. We are not the Red Cross, we are not UNHCR, but we do believe that humble humanity approach is important to have more presence on the ground and to partner with organizations to better understand the political economy and try to see how we can add our contribution. We have also significantly increased our capacity development, which is very important. 25% of the whole capacity development of the IMF is in fragile and conflict-affected states. Just over the past year, we added 30 additional staff on the ground, opening office in fragile and conflict-affected states. And the whole point, again, is to support those members that are hit the most by all this compound shock. So again, thank you very much for this, first for the forum, I would say. I think it's fantastic in this period of fragmentation to have actually a forum which has the theme of unity and to have different voice with different mandates. And as I said before, our role is really looking at macroeconomic financial stability, but very important to look at much bigger puzzle, how we can add our piece to tackle some of the issue of our time, which is forced displacement. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Frank. Karsten, we're going to turn to you next. We know that the DAC, OECD DAC, has adopted a common position on engagement and forced displacement. Can you talk about a little bit about this innovative common approach that the committee is taking?
Thank you very much, Kelly. Thank you to Japan. Thank you to UNDP for taking the lead on this. Let me just say, first of all, of course, that issue on the HDP Nexus first and on forced displacement is something that is really important to the DAC and is moving upwards on our agenda. I think that is a positive thing. The common position that you addressed was basically part of the multi-stakeholder pledge for this conference. And I think it's important that we now have 31 members of the DAC basically agreeing to that common position. And also that it's aligned with the Global Compact, it's aligned on refugees, it's aligned with UN Action Agenda on internal displacement. So basically, we're moving forward and we're moving quite aligned on that approach. I think that's important. It's also clear that I'm not going to be a party spoiler, but there are some really remarkable challenges out there that we need to take a look at. We need, of course, much more to look at issues like aid effectiveness on how we deal with partnerships. But I think that my main message here is that we did a recently OECD baseline analysis of development plans, country development plans, of high-level donor development cooperation strategies, and of UN Sustainable Development Cooperation frameworks to see how much of that actually included refugees or IDPs. And the fact was that if we look at the national development plans of countries, that only for 28% explicitly include refugees or IDPs. If you look at DAC members' overall development strategies or plans, that were only 50% of that make explicit reference to IDPs or refugees in their high-level development cooperation strategies. Actually, the UN did best. UN country teams basically for 75% of the country level UN sustainable cooperation frameworks were including refugees and IDPs. So there is a lot to work on there. And of course, if we don't get this on board in the strategic element, the strategic level, we will basically be missing out on a lot of these things. So that basically is a great challenge for all of us. The second point is that when we look at development finance for refugee situation, low and middle income countries, that, and I think it's positive, has remained for quite a long while a significant fixture of ODA, and it will probably be so in the future. There's no indication otherwise. And we can see also that this has traditionally been a humanitarian field. Funding has come from humanitarian sources. Now we can see that 40% of this support actually comes from longer-term development and peace support. So it's clear that we are moving towards making the humanitarian development nexus more real, also when it comes to funding. But here in the soup here, only 4% of financing was provided in refugee origin countries. So we're totally missing out basically on that. We need to do much better in support origin countries, creating conditions conducive to a dignified voluntary return, and alongside other durable solutions. And that is one area I think we need to focus much more on now. And of course, also linked to the whole issue of peace engagement and upping up our work on peace and making the political solution that will make return possible. But that's I think the data that we have is basically focused very much on these points. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Karsten. Important indeed. Can we turn to you next, Ms. Mizutori, to talk a little bit about how the conflation, overlap between disasters, climate, and conflict, what UNDRR has in terms of recommendations to the UN and more broadly on how to strengthen risk reduction?
Thank you very much, Ms. Clements. And thank you very much to Japan for proposing this very important multi-stakeholder pledge and for UNDP for hosting this. So I'd like to talk a little bit about this from the risk reduction, disaster risk reduction perspective. What is disaster risk reduction? This is about making sure that the risks that are surrounding us does not turn into disasters. And actually, we are failing every day in doing this. So we all get impacted when risks turn into disasters, but the impact is different. There are people more at risk. And of course, refugees and displaced people are in this, what we call most at-risk people. So we need to make sure in the context of disaster risk reduction that we understand what are the risks that is surrounding us. And talking about the nexus, whether it's a humanitarian action or development action or peace-building action, the risks that surround us are not different. They are the same. They can come from climate, they can come from geophysical hazards, but they can also come from vulnerabilities, the inequalities in our societies, the way that we look at people, we think about people, but also exposure. Where are these people, refugees are, in what circumstances, and how many people in what space of land? So these issues about the hazards, the vulnerability, and the exposure are all elements that all the stakeholders need to take into consideration where they take forward their activities around all these different spheres. So I have two recommendations to make. Let us do risk analysis jointly. Many times the humanitarians, development actors, and the peace-building actors do it differently or separately. But as I said, the risks that are surrounding us are the same. So let's do it together and let's have one, what you call a song sheet that we sing from, about what are the risks that surround us. This is my first recommendation. And actually, UNDRR, my organization, is helping stakeholders do this in countries such as Cameroon, Yemen, and Ethiopia. But my second very important recommendation is this: fund this. We are not good at funding prevention. We are good at responding once the disasters wreck us, but we don't put money into prevention. And this is the big problem. It doesn't take that much money put some money in risk reduction, in prevention, and the cost benefit is enormous. So I'd like to make an appeal to both the people who design the appeals, design the programs of development, of peace building, to put provision for prevention, and also to the donors too, whether you are UN agency or whether you are from bilateral cooperation, put money for prevention, and it will make a big difference. Thank you.
That last comment was almost as popular as Miyavi being here up on stage with me. No, that got a lot of nods and a lot of snaps of the finger there. Thank you very much for those comments. Minister, we're going to turn to you next. Like we heard in the last panel with Switzerland, I think Belgium has done an excellent job of trying to integrate the development and humanitarian approaches. Can you tell us how you've done it?
We are still trying, and it is a new mindset, and I think a very important one. On the last forum in 2019, Belgium made the promise to invest 45% of all our humanitarian aid in refugees and IDPs, and we came up to the promise. So let's say that's already something in terms of financing and in terms of also political credibility. But in a way, with crisis being more forgotten, protracted, refugees being on the run for more than 10 years, IDPs being away from home for on average 20 years, well, it's very clear that we have to go into that new mindset to focus on the nexus. I think it's important that in everything that we do, we make sure that migration is of all times, and that when we focus on the most vulnerable, on the most weak, well, it can be refugees or people on the run, but it also can be host communities that are affected by newcomers being on the run. So I think it's important also to have the basis of solidarity for migration and not to have the polarization on the forefront. It is important that we focus on both communities, host communities, newcomers, people migrating, refugees and IDPs. And that's why we try to integrate also the nexus perspective in all our bilateral programs we have, because Belgium, we are active in 14 partner countries in very fragile contexts. We are active in 5 Sahel countries, in the region of the Great Lakes. For instance, Uganda is a bilateral partner country of Belgian Development Corporation. And we made sure that in all our programs, whether it's health, whether it's education, whether it's working on the labor market, economic projects, we integrate also the host communities, but also the refugee communities. And I think it's important to create a living together, a long-term perspective together, and where we still have to make sure that the basis for that kind of solidarity is stronger. I think we have to imply not only refugee-led organizations, but also host communities, local actors, local governments, and also national governments alike. And we're planning something very new, and that would be an IDP facility for the Sahel region, because it's becoming more and more hard to work bilaterally with some governments. So an IDP facility focusing on people in the region leaving their homes, forced to leave their homes, I think that can make a difference for the stability also in unstable times. Thank you.
I think that last comment got a little bit of attention from our senior advisor on IDP solutions. Thank you very much, Minister. And finally, Secretary, I'm going to turn to you. Can you tell us from your experience the role of regional organizations should play in promoting this collaboration we've been talking about? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I came from the region which have a lot of challenges when we are talking about the Horn of Africa. We are talking about 4.5 million refugees and 13 million internally displaced people. And also I'm talking about the conflict that now happening in the region, just to mention the issue of Sudan. Before 1 year, Sudan was a host of more than 1 million refugees from the region. Now, more than 1 million Sudanese are displaced out of their country, and 12 million of Sudanese are displaced inside the country. So this is a live example that the agenda that we are talking here. The challenge is the conflict and also the climate issues and protracted conflicts that is happening in the region. As intergovernmental authority, which is working with 8 member states, we focus on refugee areas, internally displaced areas, to tackle the challenges. And most importantly, we'll work in the area of prevention. That is very important. Indeed, after we came here before 4 years here, the data is still increasing. We have not suppressed the challenges, the international challenges, even if we are very happy that the outcome, the turnout, the discussion is going on, including all entertainers who are focused on this issue. I'm very thankful for the influencers also. Now, the problem is here. According to the data which we got from International Organization of Economic Cooperation, development finance is low and the middle income countries has decreased since the last GRF. Over 50% of the ODA for refugees was targeted toward humanitarian response due to the fragility of the situation. But the bulk of the financing is spread among even mostly upper middle income countries, which are not in our region. So we are going to continue with the challenge that we are facing. So on this forum that is very important, very real for us, it's more than a forum and a discussion, that we ask that the local organizations should be empowered. The prevention aspect should be given an attention, especially as IGAD, as a regional organization who is working on the typical border area that we have to collaborate with all partners, especially Japanese who are working with us. We are very thankful, and other European Union and other multilateral institutions who are working with us. So the solution is cooperation, and the solution is coordination and as well as solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Coming back again to unity, the theme of these 3 days, certainly. So I want to thank the panelists and Miyavi very much for the insights. I think what we've heard over the last hour or so, very clearly government leadership is fundamental. If we want to really find solutions and tackle root causes, inclusion in national development plans and sectoral plans are a social and economic advantage, a win-win, as I mentioned earlier. We need to invest in the socioeconomic fabric. We talked about that, the macro approach as well. And the responses really need collaboration across borders, across regions, and certainly across actors. We all have different expertise and we all have a role to play. So I thank you very much for the conversation. We're going to do a little bit of musical chairs, and we'll ask Dr. Tanaka and my colleague from UNDP, Hao Ling, to come up and moderate a little bit of an exchange with you, we hope. So thank you very much.
We decided to take center stage ourselves, right? Take matters into our own hands. So better lighting. But thank you very much, everyone. Really, that was excellent discussions. So I will now take the opportunity to invite a number of colleagues and partners to speak from the floor, and Dr. Tanaka will make a summary of our discussions today. Okay. So without further ado, I would like to invite Ms. Charlotte Slante, Secretary General of the Danish Refugee Council, to speak from the floor. I think you're here, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for very interesting conversations in the panels. And thank you also to both Japan and UNDP for this very, very important pledge. Leave no one behind, I think, is an agenda that we all subscribe to here. But the displaced people around the world are among the populations that are left furthest behind. And that is why I think this panel is so important, and the follow-up actions to this pledge is so important. As the Danish Refugee Council, we believe that a multi-sectoral response with a focus on peace and prevention of conflict is actually key to preventing and ending forced displacement and enabling safe and dignified returns. And I'd like to leave you with an image of a gentleman that I met in Yemen on the west banks, literally sandbanks on the west coast of Yemen. He stood there and he thanked us, DRC, and other humanitarian actors for providing him with a shelter, for ensuring that his family was well fed, and that there was clean drinking water. And then he said, "My deepest wish is to go back to my village. It is to cultivate my land and continue the life that I had. But my village is destroyed, my house is overtaken by others, my fields are littered with landmines, and there's nothing I can build on if I go back there." I mean, the borders are between different financing instruments was not important to that gentleman. He wanted solutions to his life. DRC operates with its many partners around the world along that spectrum of displacement, of the displacement cycle, to save lives and promote solutions and prevent displacement, and is actually one of the few humanitarian actors that also implements bottom-up peace-building efforts as part of our sector, including humanitarian demining. For us to carry on with these efforts, it's crucial that we have also heard here today that donors prioritize multi-year funding, that they manage to link the different funding instruments at national and international levels and coordinate effectively. It's so good to understand and hear that these agendas and the holistic approach is moving into the administrations of donor agencies. We heard the stories from SDC and Belgium today. But it's also very important to hear that the forced displacement agenda is moving up the agenda of the IMF, the World Bank, and the other international financial institutions. This is so very positive and a very important piece in creating prosperity for all. The current conflicts from Gaza to Sudan, DR Congo, Sahel, and Myanmar, they require flexibility, and they require humanitarian and development donors working together with governments in host countries, in countries of origin, to create that change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I see that our time police is at work. Okay, so you're supposed to speak for 2 minutes, but I think now we follow the 5 minutes rule, so we don't have moral high ground, to ask you to keep to 2 minutes, but it will be appreciated, definitely. Thank you very much. We have, I think, 8 more speakers, so we needed to manage the time. So next, I would like to call on Ambassador Professor Prosper Ngandu, the Commissioner for Refugees for the government of the Republic of Zambia, to speak. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Takhana and Kuso. Just briefly, this is just an intervention. Zambia has been an open door policy to refugees, asylum seekers since 1940s. And to that, Zambia has come to realize that peace without war, it is not totally peace. So, as we are hosting the refugees, we have come up with a model, what we are calling modernization of refugees settlement, hosting community settlement approach. This is meant to protect refugees and hosting community. And this model has 4 pillars. One, we are looking at digitalizing the Commission for Refugees, where all the refugees will have access to the documentations. And we are also looking at harmonization of laws. We feel that refugees are not enjoying much in our country because some of them have no access to education, some of them have no access to employment. So with this MONASA, we are saying once the laws are harmonized, We have also included refugees in free education so that when they complete, they can also access employment. We are also looking at the other areas of laws that are required that refugees should enjoy together with the hosting community. The third one, we are looking at improvement in the settlement areas. We are taking the social and economic activities in the settlement areas so that the hosting community and refugees can enjoy. The fourth one, we are saying improvement of infrastructure, the roads, and most of the settlements do not have even a link or have no connection to power and technology. So with all these pillars, we feel that the refugees in our country and the hosting community are going to enjoy all the human rights that are endowed with them, and that even the development partners and all academicians and what we are calling on board to ensure that we assist the Republic of Zambia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this inspirational example from Zambia. Thank you very much. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Elke Lobel, Commissioner for Refugee Policy, from the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, Germany. Please.
Thank you so much. Little time, so I will start directly. We heard about constantly growing numbers of newly displaced persons worldwide. And on the other hand side, we have to recognize there are shrinking budgets. Undoubtedly, besides humanitarian assistance, development and peace actors have to be better integrated early on. We heard about this. Longer-term development funding needs to be understood as key contribution to sustainable solutions for displaced persons and their hosts, very important, and their hosts. We experienced as Germany that dedicated multi-annual financing instruments that promote cooperation and a comprehensive approach make the difference in operationalizing the HDP Nexus in displacement settings. So let's do much more of this together. And I think the panel was wonderful. I bring with me some pledges from Germany. Germany commits to continue its HDP Nexus instrument working in displacement context, the special initiative, displaced persons and host communities through comprehensive approaches. We promote resilience, self-reliance and durable solution for refugees and host communities. A special emphasis lies on the inclusion of displaced persons in national systems. We heard about the importance. Germany pledges to establish a multi-donor Nexus funding facility for the Lake Chad region, fostering an integrated Nexus approach. Germany pledges to continue to support to advancing aid efficiency with the HDP Nexus Academy. I think it's great, from operated by UNDP, and the HDP Nexus Help Desk, operating under OECD DAC International Network on Conflict and Fragility, which will help us to be very practical on the Nexus. Germany pledges to support the formation and deployment of HDP Nexus advisors to relevant program development and coordination structures. And last pledge, Germany will elevate and mainstream the issues of forced displacement and the volunteer safe and dignified return of refugees in multilateral fora and policies relevant for the HDP Nexus. And we will do all this together with our partners. Thank you so much for this forum.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lobel. Really appreciate it. I just want to say that as of now, I believe we have 65 pledges based on the information system that we have seen. So really strong pledges from member states and also partner agencies. Thank you very much. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Yaro Balde, Director, Transition States Coordination Office of the African Development Bank Group.
Thank you very much. I would first like to thank Japan, UNDP, and UNHCR for organizing this important event and also giving us the opportunity to share our insights on this HDP Nexus engagement to prevent and address forced displacement. The African Development Bank strategy for addressing fragility and building resilience in Africa provides us with a solid strategic framework to support our African member countries in addressing complex root causes of fragility, conflict, violence, and fostering climate resilience with a strong focus on prevention. Partnerships are the bedrock of the implementation of the strategy and our commitment to the HDP Nexus. Collaborating with HDP actors, including the private sector and civil society, will remain committed to creating impactful alliances and pioneering financing instruments. A typical example is our growing partnership with the ICRC in active conflict zones in Mali, Chad, and Niger. We just signed an MOU with them this morning, showing the growth in this partnership. Another example is the work we are doing with UNHCR in the Sahel and the work we do with regional economic communities, such as East African Community and IGAD, with UNHCR to support regulatory reforms in Eastern Africa for enhanced inclusion of refugees and hosting communities. Furthermore, we systematically apply fragility and resilience lens in our programming, which ensures forcibly displaced and hosting communities considerations are included in the design of bank-funded operations in our regional member countries. The MDP platform on economic migration and forced displacement also remains a critical mechanism for exchange, knowledge generation, and to expand policy and operational complementarity amongst MDBs, as per the joint statement issued during this Global Refugee Forum. We must continue to work together with our partners and stakeholders to find innovative, holistic solutions intentionally designed to address forced displacement. Going forward, we aspire these HDP Nexus partnerships to become much more systematic with joint knowledge and informing joint programming. This will also require enhanced coordination and collaboration on the ground in fragile settings. The Central Africa Regional Solutions Platform, initiated by UNHCR, is one such good example. Amid the intricate challenges of forced displacement, there are also vibrant stories of resilience and innovation that emanate from our engagement across Africa. These stories fill us with optimism, reinforcing our belief that by working together, we can achieve our objectives. For example, we believe that entrepreneurship is the source of innovation, and by leveraging technological progress, we can create wealth, even at the level of the most vulnerable and conflict-affected communities. At the African Development Bank, our mission is inherently inclusive, and we are eager to amplify and scale up our commitment to the HDP Nexus and in building strategic partnerships to prevent and address forced displacement across Africa. We believe this will significantly improve our collective impact on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Torbjörn Pettersson, Assistant Director General of the Swedish International Development Agency.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this pledge to Japan and UNDP. I will not repeat why this is important. We've heard that from the panel. So to Sweden's development aid, a strong focus on the poorest and most vulnerable, including displaced population, is at the heart, and including strengthening their resilience and addressing causes of crisis, of course. To do this in a number of contexts, countries and regions with large displacement, Sweden funds both humanitarian assistance and development cooperation, including peace building. So for example, we work in Uganda, Somalia, Sudan, DRC, South Sudan, Burkina Faso, Mali, Ethiopia, Afghanistan, the Syria crisis, Yemen and Bangladesh, using this approach, including supporting IGAD, to refer to one of the panelists before, in this work. So to us, it's at the core of what we do in our development for the last 5 or 10 years and so. The most maybe important step to make this happen to us has been to have a joined up humanitarian development and peace analysis as donors, and also in our dialogue with the host countries. This analysis has brought the humanitarian perspective into development, which is a starting point to make this all happen. So we do a lot of things supporting this pledge, and we extremely much welcome it. I would like to stress one thing which we think are extremely important, and that's the development of data and on migration to host countries and to us as development partners. For that reason, we spend quite a lot of energy, and that also fits very much into this pledge, to improve the data on migrations. For example, together with the IOM and the African Union and the Swedish Statistics Agency, we assist African countries in improving their data so that they can obtain and include data on migration and displacement better in the planning. So that's one concrete step relating, but it really goes for everything we do, that to use the approach we heard about today. So thanks again, and I hope I stick to my 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Elizabeth Campbell, Deputy Assistant Secretary, Bureau of Population, Refugees and Migration at the United States Department of State.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for this really important discussion. This agenda is extremely centrally important to the United States. We have used the Global Refugee Forum as sort of a forcing mechanism inside our own government to try to work in a way that is more cohesive in our own policy and programs. We are so pleased that we have our colleagues from USAID, from the Department of Treasury, and from the Development Financing Corporation on our delegation as an indication of how we must work together in every aspect of our work. And it is extremely hard because, like you, we also all, particularly from the humanitarian perspective, get pulled into new and emerging crises, right? And to sort of take a step back from that and to try to think about how we work with others who are not directly in our institutions, our line of authority, in our direct actions is extremely challenging, but it is necessary. It is the only way forward. We are living in a moment of exploding need. We can all describe in great detail the challenges. Financial resources are not going to be sufficient in the way that we are currently working to meet that need. It means we must work differently, and we have to be committed to this agenda. We have to see it through. We have to talk to people who do not use our same language. So for example, I now find myself often talking to young graduates from management schools. I have no idea what they're saying, but somehow I know it is extremely important that their private sector capabilities are part of the conversations we're having when we develop humanitarian and development responses. So again, thank you so much for this discussion. We stand strongly in support of it and are trying also to do our part to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So next, I would like to invite Ms. Maria Dimitriadou, the World Bank's Special Representative to the UN and the WTO and the head of the World Bank Geneva office to speak.
Thank you very much. We are very pleased from the World Bank to join this very important event and to be among so many of our partners. First, let me thank the government of Japan, UNDP, and UNHCR for bringing us all together to further partnerships across humanitarian development and peace approaches on forced displacement. The bank takes a medium to long-term perspective in addressing socioeconomic impacts of forced displacement. Our aim is to support country-led development priorities through data and analytics, policy support, and operations. Leveraging our complementary mandates, as Dr. Tanaka also mentioned, thank you for mentioning complementarity, we partner with other humanitarian development and peace actors towards shared objectives to maximize the impact of our collective efforts, and that is to prevent crisis and build resilience. Ms. Musitori also highlighted that, but also to respond to crisis and mitigate their impacts once these occur. Our strategic partnership with UNHCR is an excellent example of this HDP nexus and complementarity. Our ambition in the bank to further partnerships is also a key part of our evolution process and our vision to create a world free of poverty on a livable planet. We very much want to express my appreciation in all the experiences shared by host countries, but all of you in the room in highlighting the importance of partnerships. Our FCV strategy, which was launched in 2020, has enabled us to allocate more resources. And you may have heard yesterday at the plenary panel that we intend to provide an additional $3 billion through the IDA window for host communities and refugees, but also to mobilize additional resources through the Global Concessional Financing Facility for middle-income countries that can mobilize another $5 billion. In doing so, the bank will work very closely with host country governments to make sure that these resources support their priorities and complement the efforts of the international community. So whether it is about creating opportunities for refugees in their hosting communities to achieve self-reliance, or having more children in school, or nurturing the conditions of safe return, humanitarian and development and peace actors, we can make a difference in working together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have two more speakers before the summary by Dr. Tanaka. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Elka Karetsen, Director for Human Development, Migration, Governance, and Peace in the Directorate General for international partnerships of the European Union in the DG Interpa. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks a lot to Japan and UNDP for convening this very important event. So for the European Commission, European Union, working in the HDP Nexus approach has been a long-standing commitment from our side ever since the concept existing, putting together our resources and our the pieces of our institutions together to have this approach, also working together with international organizations and the EU member states. Aligned with the INCAF common position and the Global Compact on Refugees, the EU focuses on the early mitigation of displacement shocks in low and middle income countries, integrating comprehensive humanitarian development, peace, and climate strategies. It'll be, we will continue to address the drivers of displacement and support durable solutions for refugees. More specifically, and here comes the financial pledge that I would like to make today. The EU pledges 126.5 million euro for integrated programs that address the immediate needs of displaced populations while promoting sustainable development, peace building, and climate resilience to foster durable solutions, reduce vulnerabilities, and enhance the overall well-being of displacement populations and their hosts. Through this funding, the EU will support, among others, the UNHCR as part of a 3-year humanitarian programmatic partnership to support the refugee response in Uganda, offering more livelihood opportunities for refugees and local communities. The pledge also includes a 5 million euro support to the platform in Sub-Saharan Africa, IGAD, and the Central African Republic platforms, and provide durable solutions to the Burundian refugee crisis in the Great Lakes region with a total of 40 million. Finally, the EU, through this pledge, will provide durable solutions for displaced population in Sub-Saharan Africa in general for a total amount of 75 million euro, and projects will be implemented for the period 2023 to 2026. For those participants staying at the Hilton, but also others who may want to come by, just also let me use the opportunity to invite you and come and visit an exhibition that we will open in half an hour, which will showcase a photo exhibition in the lobby of the Hilton Hotel of the EU UNOPS Lives in Dignity Grant facility. This is a textbook example of what the EU is doing through the Nexus in action, promoting a holistic approach to displacement crisis. So very much welcome to visit this exhibition in the hotel lobby. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Last to speak is France. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Jean-Bertrand Motes, head of the Division on Fragility, Crisis, and the Conflict in the French Agency for Development.
Merci beaucoup. Merci au PNUD et au Japon pour cette discussion très intéressante. Face à la multiplication des crises et des conflits, la France promeut une vision globale et une approche globale et de long terme des crises, à la fois pour prévenir les crises, agir face à l'urgence et être capable évidemment de construire la suite. Cela implique évidemment une meilleure coordination des acteurs, à la fois de l'humanitaire, du développement et de la paix dans l'équipe France. Et c'est pourquoi le directeur général de l'AFD, Rémi Rioux, que je représente aujourd'hui, malheureusement, il n'a pas pu venir, a souhaité que l'Agence française de développement se rapproche de partenaires humanitaires de terrain face aux crises et aux conflits, dont évidemment les partenaires les plus pertinents que sont le HCR ou d'autres acteurs comme le CICR. Du côté financier, je ne voudrais pas rallonger puisque je pense que tout le monde a envie d'aller déjeuner aujourd'hui. Du côté financier, je suis ravi de pouvoir annoncer que l'Agence française de développement va continuer à s'investir auprès des communautés et des territoires les plus affectés par les déplacés forcés, à la faveur aussi de l'inclusion des déplacés forcés et des réfugiés sur les 4 années qui viennent à hauteur de 150 millions d'euros à travers le fonds Paix et Résilience MINCA, qui est l'outil principal d'intervention sur le Nexus pour la France. Nous sommes heureux d'annoncer que nous allons continuer à travailler sur les zones comme l'Afrique de l'Ouest, l'Afrique de l'Est, la Corne bien évidemment, le lac Tchad et aussi le Moyen-Orient sur ces thématiques très importantes. Voilà, je vous remercie encore.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the speakers for your excellent contributions and the pledges. And there are so many things that I want to say, but I don't have time. So, but I have to really take the opportunity to thank all our donors, Japan, our host country, Switzerland, and the donors in the room, the United States, Germany, Belgium, and European Union, France, and so many others, Sweden. And those are not in the room, Norway, Republic of Korea, and so forth, for all your support to our core and non-core resources, for this important HDP nexus. Development is the best prevention, and we have a lot to discuss about this. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Hao-Lian, for moderating the last part of this important panel discussion. I think the panel was wonderful. I would like to extend my thanks to all the panelists and all those who made intervention from the floor and all the participants in this room. I would like to thank our co-host UNDP and UNHCR and the Swiss government for organizing this really great global refugee forums. After listening to the very, very rich discussion, I'm not able to sum up but I would like to pick up the only three keywords out of many important suggestions. The first keyword, the whole of society approach. I'm very glad to see a wide variety of actors join the discussions today to further promote the HDR Nexus. Of course, in order to do that, funding is important, and particularly funding for prevention is quite critical. The second keyword, mutual complementarity. Mutual complementarity to create synergies. Each of the HDP actors, including musicians, should play to its strengths while sharing the same goal. Finally, the third is the role of the host government. Their leadership role and their ownership is the key to create synergies of various actors. Today, we have heard lots of good practices and examples of the host government. Lessons should be learned. Finally, I would like to assure you once again that JICA is committed to work with host country governments for their capacity development to promote the HDP nexus based on the whole of society approach. We would like to see cooperation from all the stakeholders represented here in order to realize HDP nexus approach. Thank you very, very much for your lively discussions and excellent recommendations. Thank you very much.